Most people will spend the next 12 months becoming a slightly older version of who they already are, but a rare few will use those same 12 months to become someone entirely different. Good evening. I want to talk to you tonight about something that may be the most important subject any person can consider: the deliberate, purposeful reinvention of the self. Now, I don't mean a cosmetic change. I don't mean a new wardrobe, a different city, or a fresh resolution written on a notepad and forgotten by February. I mean something far more profound. I mean the kind of transformation that reaches down into the roots of who you are and pulls up something entirely new. I mean becoming a different person. And I want to suggest to you that 12 months, one single year, is all the time required. Most people, when they hear the word reinvention, think of upheaval. They imagine dramatic events, sudden inspiration, or some fortunate collision with opportunity. But that is not how human beings change. Not genuinely, not lastingly. Real change is quiet, it is consistent. It is almost invisible until one day it is undeniable. The person who reinvents themselves over 12 months does not make a dramatic announcement. They simply begin, and then they continue. And then, when the world looks up, it finds someone different standing where someone ordinary once stood. That is what I want for you tonight. Let me share with you the central truth upon which everything else rests. You become what you think about, and you behave your way into the person you think about becoming. Read that again slowly, if you will. You see, most people believe that transformation is a matter of feeling differently before acting differently. They wait to feel motivated. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel like the person they wish to become. But that is the great reversal. That is the error that keeps millions of men and women exactly where they are year after year, decade after decade. The truth, the hard, clean, liberating truth is this: you act your way into a new way of being. Feeling follows action. Identity follows behavior. The new self is not discovered. It is constructed one deliberate day at a time. Now, let us talk about the method itself. Not philosophy alone, but practice. The first principle is this: name who you are becoming. Before a single day of your 12 months begins, you must answer one question clearly and without hesitation. Who, precisely, do I intend to be on the other side of this year? Not vaguely better, not generally healthier or somewhat more successful, but specifically, concretely, the disciplined professional, the calm and present parent, the creative thinker who ships their work, the person who honors their body, sharpens their mind, and leads with quiet confidence. Write it down. Name it, because a target you cannot name is a target you cannot hit. The second principle: break the year into 12 chapters. Each month is not merely a passage of time. It is a chapter in the story of your reinvention. In the first chapter, you address your habits, the daily behaviors that currently construct the version of you that you wish to leave behind. In the second, you address your environment, the rooms you inhabit, the voices you listen to, the influences that quietly shape your thinking. Chapter by chapter, you rebuild diet, discipline, craft, relationships, mind, spirit. You do not overhaul everything at once. That is the method of the enthusiastic beginner who burns bright and fades fast. You move deliberately, like a craftsman who understands that great work is assembled, not rushed. 12 months, 12 chapters, one remarkable conclusion. The third principle: guard the morning hours as if your life depends upon them, because the life you want does. The person you are becoming must be met each morning before the world arrives with its demands and distractions. The first hour of your day is not for email. It is not for news. It is not for the trivial machinery of the modern world. It is for you, for reading the right books, for reflection, for movement, for speaking clearly, even in silence, to the self you are building. Earl Nightingale once observed that an hour a day of focused study in any field will place you at the top of that field within 3 years. I tell you tonight, an hour a day of deliberate self-construction will place you beyond recognition within 12 months. The fourth principle: seek discomfort as a measurement of progress. Here is where most people quietly retreat, and where the rare individual quietly advances. Comfort is the velvet cage of mediocrity. It is pleasant, it is familiar, and it will preserve you perfectly intact, exactly as you are, indefinitely, if you allow it. The new person you are becoming lives just beyond the edge of what currently feels natural. Every conversation you avoid no longer. Every discipline that feels difficult, that is precisely where your attention belongs. Every moment of resistance is a signpost pointing directly toward the growth you say you want. Do not run from it. Walk toward it. Calmly, deliberately, with the full knowledge that discomfort is not your enemy. It is your professor. The fifth principle: measure who you are becoming, not merely what you are achieving. We live in a world obsessed with metrics, numbers, outputs, results, and results matter. I do not dismiss them. But during your 12 months of reinvention, your deepest measure must be character. Ask yourself each evening, not what did I accomplish today, but who was I today? Was I the person I named at the beginning of this journey? Did I think as they think? Did I respond as they would respond? Did I hold the standard I set, or did I negotiate it downward when no one was watching? Because no one is always watching, but you are always becoming. The sixth principle: trust the accumulation. This is perhaps the most difficult counsel I can offer, because it asks something of you that our impatient world has nearly trained out of us entirely. It asks you to trust the process when the mirror has not yet changed. In the early months, you will act differently and feel the same. You will build new habits and still catch glimpses of the old self. You will make progress that is invisible to everyone, including yourself. Do not stop. The oak tree does not question itself underground. The musician does not abandon the instrument because the first month of practice sounds nothing like mastery. Trust the accumulation of right action. It is compounding invisibly, relentlessly, and the day will come, sometime in your 10th or 11th or 12th month, when someone who has known you for years looks at you differently. Not because you changed overnight, but because you have been changing every day, quietly and without announcement, for nearly a year. And that moment is unlike anything else a human being can experience. Now, I want to address something that will come, and I assure you it will come. There will be a month, perhaps the third, perhaps the sixth, when the initial energy of beginning has faded, and the reward of arrival has not yet appeared. You will find yourself standing in the gray middle of your transformation, and the voice of the old self will speak. It will be reasonable. It will be gentle. It will suggest that perhaps the change is too slow, or the cost too high, or perhaps you are fine as you were. Do not negotiate with that voice. Not because it is wicked, it is not. It is simply afraid. And fear, though it speaks convincingly, is not a reliable guide to the life you are capable of living. When that voice comes, acknowledge it, set it aside, and take the next right action. That is all. Not a grand gesture, not a recommitment ceremony, simply the next right action taken today. That is how the battle is won. I want to close tonight with this thought. The most extraordinary thing about the human being is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not even ambition. It is the capacity available to every person listening to my voice tonight to choose who they will be. No animal possesses this power. No machine replicates it. It belongs to you, and to you alone, as the peculiar and astonishing gift of your humanity. And 12 months from tonight you will be someone. The only question that has ever mattered is who. I want to begin tonight with something that most people carry quietly, a feeling they rarely speak aloud, yet feel almost every day of their adult lives. It is the sense that who they are right now is simply who they are. Permanently, conclusively, as though somewhere along the road from childhood to the present moment, a door was closed, a mold was set, and the shape of their character was cast in something resembling stone. Perhaps you have felt it yourself. That quiet resignation when you say, I have always been this way. That small surrender when a new ambition rises inside you and is almost immediately answered by a familiar voice that says, but you are not that kind of person. That invisible ceiling that is not made of circumstance or opportunity, but of something far more personal, something you have come to believe is simply the truth about yourself. And so you remain, not because life has trapped you, but because you have accepted a story about yourself as permanent fact, when in truth it was never anything more than a habit wearing the costume of identity. Here is what I want you to understand tonight with absolute clarity. The self is not a fixed object, it is a living process. Every quality you admire in another human being, their discipline, their calm, their confidence, their generosity, was not handed to them at birth like eye color or bone structure. It was built, quietly, repetitiously, through the steady accumulation of chosen behavior, practiced often enough that it stopped feeling like effort and started feeling like nature. What we call as personality is largely nothing more than pattern. What we call character is largely nothing more than habit, repeated until it becomes invisible. And what we call who I am is, in most cases, simply what I have consistently done. This is not a diminishment of the human being. It is the most liberating truth available to one. Because if your identity is a collection of practiced patterns, then it can be practiced differently. Consider the man who calls himself impatient. He has called himself that for 20 years. His family confirms it. His colleagues expect it. He himself has long since stopped questioning it, as one stops questioning the color of the sky. But impatience is not a feature of his soul. It is a response he has rehearsed, a reaction he reaches for automatically, because he has reached for it 10,000 times before, and no one, least of all himself, ever asked him to reach for something else instead. Change the rehearsal, and over time, not overnight, but over time, you change the man. This is where everything begins, not with a dramatic event, not with extraordinary willpower summoned from some hidden reserve, but with a simple, quiet, revolutionary decision. The decision to stop treating your current self as your final self. You are not who you were. You are not yet who you will be. You are, at this very moment, in the precise and powerful process of becoming, whether you are directing that process or not. The only question worth asking is this: will you choose, from this evening forward, to direct it deliberately? Because the person you are capable of becoming is not waiting behind a locked door for which you have no key. They are waiting behind a habit, one you have not yet chosen to build. Begin building it tomorrow morning, and then again the morning after that. And nothing more complicated than that is where reinvention begins. I want to talk to you tonight about time. Not in the way that most people think about it, as something that passes, something that runs short, something that seems always to be slipping just beyond their grasp, but in a way that very few people ever consider. In a way that, once understood, changes everything about how a person approaches the project of their own life. Most people, when they decide to change, think in one of two directions. They think in days, small, urgent, breathless bursts of effort that burn brightly for a week and fade just as quickly. Or they think in years, vast, distant, abstract horizons that feel inspiring in January and invisible by March. And because neither unit quite fits the scale of genuine transformation, most people find themselves cycling endlessly between the two, sprinting and stopping, resolving and retreating, beginning again and again from the same starting line. And somewhere in the quiet of an ordinary evening, a thought arrives that is heavier than most. The thought that perhaps they are simply not built for lasting change. That perhaps the problem is not the method, but the person. That thought is wrong, and I want to tell you precisely why. The problem has never been the person. The problem has been the unit of measurement. A single day is too small to reveal progress. It offers no perspective, no arc, no visible distance traveled. A single year, on the other hand, is too large to feel manageable. It stretches so far ahead that the mind cannot hold it with any sense of urgency or intimacy, and so effort dissolves into the enormity of it. But a month is something a human being can hold in both hands. It is long enough to build something real, long enough for a new behavior to move from conscious effort to quiet routine, long enough to accumulate results that are visible, measurable, and encouraging, yet short enough to feel immediate, short enough that the beginning and the end exist within the same emotional horizon, short enough that you never lose sight of the finish line, because the finish line is never more than 30 days away. This is not a small distinction. It is the entire architecture of successful change. Think of your 12 months not as a year stretching vaguely into the future, but as 12 separate and purposeful chapters, each with its own theme, its own focus, its own clear beginning and satisfying conclusion. In the first chapter, perhaps you address the way you begin your mornings. Not your career, not your relationships, not your finances, simply the first hour of your day. One thing, one chapter. 30 days of focused, deliberate attention on a single lever of your life. By the time that chapter closes, the behavior has begun to settle. It no longer requires the same conscious effort it demanded on day one. It has started quietly and without drama to become part of the structure of who you are. And then you open the next chapter. Perhaps this one addresses what you consume, the books, the conversations, the ideas you allow into your mind each day. Again, one focus, 1 month. 30 days of intention applied to a single dimension of your growth. Do you begin to see the power of this? By the time 12 chapters have been written, each one building upon the last, each one adding a new layer to the person you are constructing, you do not simply have a collection of better habits. You have a different life. You have, in the most precise and literal sense, become a different person. And here is what I find most remarkable about this method. At no point during those 12 months were you asked to change everything at once. At no point were you required to summon some extraordinary and unsustainable burst of total transformation. You were asked only to do one thing, completely, consistently, and with full attention for 30 days at a time. That is something every person listening to my voice tonight is entirely capable of. Not someday, when conditions are perfect and motivation is abundant. Right now, with whatever chapter your life most urgently needs written first. The great book of your reinvention will not be written in a single sitting. No great book ever is. It is written one chapter at a time by a person who sits down each morning with the quiet intention of adding something worthy to the page, and who trusts, without needing to see the completed manuscript, that the chapters will accumulate into something extraordinary. You have 12 months. You have 12 chapters. Decide tonight which chapter begins tomorrow morning. Then write it, one day at a time, for 30 days with everything you have. That is the method. That is the whole of it. And it is more than enough. I want to speak to you tonight about something that most people never examine. Something so close to them, so constant and familiar, that it has become nearly invisible. Like the air in the room where you sit right now, present in every breath, shaping every moment, yet almost never considered. I am talking about your environment, and I want to begin with a feeling I suspect you know rather well. You have made a decision, a real one, a serious one. You have felt the genuine weight of commitment settle into your chest. You have told yourself with complete sincerity that this time will be different. This time, the discipline will hold. This time, the new habit will last. This time, you will become the person you have been intending to become for longer than you care to admit. And for a few days, perhaps even a few weeks, it does hold. The intention is strong. The effort is real. You can feel the new version of yourself beginning to take shape. And then, almost without noticing, something shifts. The momentum slows. The effort that felt energizing begins to feel draining. The environment around you, the same rooms, the same routines, the same voices, the same triggers, begins to pull with a quiet, persistent gravity. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you find yourself drifting back. Not because you are weak, not because the goal was wrong, but because you attempted to grow a new plant in the same soil that had always produced the old one. Here is what I want you to understand tonight. Human beings are not islands. We are not sealed, self-contained units of pure willpower, capable of changing independently of everything that surrounds us. We are, in a very real and practical sense, products of our environments. The spaces we inhabit, the objects within our reach, the sounds that fill our hours, the people whose voices we hear most frequently, all of these things are not merely the backdrop of our lives. They are active ingredients in the daily construction of who we are. A man who wishes to read more, but keeps his television at the center of his living room, is not simply a man who lacks discipline. He is a man who has arranged his world to produce one behavior while hoping for another. The environment will win that contest almost every time. Not because willpower is worthless, it is not, but because willpower is a finite resource. An environment is a constant one. You cannot outwork a world designed to produce the results you are trying to escape. This is why the most important renovation you can undertake during your 12 months of reinvention is not internal. It is external. Before you demand new behavior from yourself, design a world that makes new behavior natural. Consider what this means in practice. If your mornings are the chapter you are currently writing, then your evening environment must be arranged to serve that morning. The book placed on the nightstand rather than the phone. The desk cleared and ready rather than cluttered and discouraging. The alarm positioned across the room rather than within easy reach of a drowsy hand. Small arrangements, seemingly trivial details, and yet each one is a quiet vote cast in favor of the person you are becoming. If the people in your daily circle speak the language of limitation, if their conversations circle endlessly around complaint, resignation, and the comfortable assumption that ambition is for other kinds of people, then you must, with kindness but with firmness, expand your circle. Seek out the voices, whether in person or in print, that speak the language of growth. of possibility, of earned achievement. You do not become what you simply wish to become. You become what you are consistently surrounded by. Now I want to offer you something practical, something you can act upon before this evening is over. Walk through the space where you spend most of your waking hours and ask yourself one question about each element within it. Does this serve the person I am becoming, or the person I am leaving behind? The answer to that question, applied honestly and consistently to your physical world, your digital world, and your social world, will do more to accelerate your reinvention than almost any act of pure willpower alone. This is not about perfection. It is not about building a sterile, curated existence stripped of warmth and spontaneity. It is about conscious design. It is about understanding that your surroundings are either working quietly on your behalf or quietly against you, and that you have far more authority over that arrangement than you have likely ever exercised. The gardener does not blame the seed for failing to thrive in poor soil. He improves the soil. He arranges the conditions. And then he steps back with patience and watches what becomes possible when the right environment is finally in place. You are both the gardener and the seed. Begin tonight with one small rearrangement, one object moved, one voice added, one distraction removed, one corner of your world redesigned to reflect the person you have decided to become. It is a small act, but it is not a small thing. It is the beginning of a world that grows you rather than holds you. I want to talk to you tonight about something that lives quietly at the center of every meaningful transformation a human being has ever achieved. Something so unglamorous, so unhurried, so utterly devoid of drama that our modern world has nearly lost its appreciation for it entirely. And yet without it, nothing lasting is ever built. No character is ever truly formed. No version of a person worth becoming is ever actually reached. I am talking about repetition. But before I tell you what repetition can do for you, I want to speak honestly about what its absence has already cost you. You have set goals before, real ones, written ones, goals accompanied by genuine emotion and sincere intention. You have stood at the beginning of a new year, a new month, a new Monday morning, and felt the clean and certain feeling of a fresh beginning. You have made the resolution, drawn the plan, perhaps even taken the first several steps with real conviction. And then life arrived, not catastrophically, not with any single defeating blow, but steadily, quietly, the way water finds its way through the smallest crack. The days grew ordinary again. The initial feeling faded, and without that feeling to carry you forward, the actions gradually stopped. The goal remained on the list. The person you intended to become remained at a comfortable distance. And what settled in its place was something heavier than failure. It was the quiet, corrosive suspicion that perhaps you are simply not someone who follows through. That perhaps lasting change is genuinely possible for others, but not, for whatever private reason, for you. I want to address that suspicion directly tonight. It is not true. And the reason it is not true is this. You were never defeated by weakness of character. You were defeated by a misunderstanding of how human beings actually change. We have been taught, by culture, by commerce, by the seductive promise of the dramatic breakthrough, that transformation arrives in moments. The sudden insight, the powerful experience, the single decision that divides a life into before and after. And while such moments do exist, they are not where transformation lives. They are merely where it begins. Transformation lives in the days that follow, in the ordinary, unwitnessed, unremarkable repetition of a chosen action, performed not when inspiration is high, but especially when it is not. Performed not because it feels significant in the moment, but because the accumulation of such moments is the only substance from which a new self can be genuinely constructed. The sculptor does not create with a single strike of the chisel. The form emerges through 10,000 careful, patient, deliberate strokes, each one removing a little more of what the figure is not, and revealing a little more of what it is. You are the sculptor, and you are also the stone. Consider what this means in practical terms. The person you admire for their discipline did not wake one morning possessed of it. They performed a disciplined action on a Monday when they did not feel like it, and then again on Tuesday, and then again with less resistance on Wednesday, until the behavior that once required conscious effort began to require almost none, because it had been practiced into the structure of their daily life. This is not a gift available only to the extraordinary. It is a process available to anyone willing to understand it and apply it. Neuroscience today confirms what philosophers have understood for centuries. The brain physically reshapes itself around repeated behavior. The action performed consistently enough stops being a decision and becomes a default. The person who runs each morning does not spend willpower deciding whether to run. Running has become, through patient repetition, simply what they do. This means that the difficult thing you are attempting to make part of your life right now will not always feel as difficult as it does today. If you repeat it, not perfectly, but persistently, the resistance will diminish, the effort will lighten, and the behavior will begin quietly and without announcement to feel like you. But here is the counsel I want to leave with you most firmly tonight. Do not wait for a significant day to begin the repetition. Do not wait for the first of the month, the start of the week, the arrival of better circumstances or stronger motivation. The repetition that will sculpt your new self begins with today's action, not tomorrow's intention. Today's action, it need not be large. In fact, the smaller and more consistent the action, the more reliably it compounds over time. A man who reads 10 pages every single day will have read 18 substantial books by the end of 1 year. A woman who spends 20 minutes each morning in focused skill development will have invested more than 120 hours in her own growth by December. Neither action feels significant on any given Tuesday, but accumulated across 365 days, each becomes the difference between a life that changed and a life that meant to. The resolution made once and abandoned is carved in sand. The action repeated daily is carved in stone, and stone, shaped with patience and with purpose, becomes something worth standing in front of. Something worth having made, something that did not exist before you decided, quietly, without announcement, on an ordinary evening not unlike this one, to pick up the chisel and begin. Begin tonight, repeat tomorrow, and trust with everything you have the power of what accumulates. I want to speak to you tonight about something that every person who has ever attempted to grow beyond their current circumstances has encountered. Something that arrives not loudly, not dramatically, but with a quiet and persistent presence that is difficult to ignore, and even more difficult to move through. It is the feeling that what you are attempting is simply too hard, not impossible perhaps, but harder than you anticipated. Harder than it looked from the comfortable distance of intention, harder than the version of it you imagined when the goal was still abstract and the effort was still theoretical. You began with genuine commitment. The first steps felt purposeful, even energizing. There was something deeply satisfying about finally moving in the direction of the person you intended to become. And then, somewhere along the way, the novelty wore thin. The process revealed itself to be genuinely demanding. The mornings grew harder to meet. The discipline required more than you initially budgeted. The new behavior chafed against old comfort in ways you did not fully anticipate. And in that chafing, in that specific, persistent, deeply personal friction, a voice arose. Reasonable in its tone, measured in its delivery, almost compassionate in the way it spoke. It said, "Perhaps this is not the right time. Perhaps the cost is too high. Perhaps the person you are trying to become is further away than you calculated, and the distance between here and there is simply greater than what you currently have the strength to cross." And you stood at that threshold, not defeated, but uncertain, wondering whether the discomfort you were feeling was a signal to stop, or a signal that you were finally, genuinely, moving in the right direction. I want to answer that question for you tonight. It is the latter, always the latter. Here is what I have come to understand about the nature of human growth, after a lifetime of studying the men and women who have genuinely transformed their lives. Discomfort is not the obstacle that stands between you and growth. Discomfort is the very medium through which growth travels. It is not the wall, it is the door. And the only way through it is directly, not around it, not beneath it, not by waiting until it somehow dissolves on its own. Think for a moment about anything of genuine value you have ever developed in your life. Any skill that now feels natural, any strength that now feels like yours. Was there a period, early ungainly, frustrating, when it felt like anything but natural? When the gap between where you were and where you wished to be felt almost discouraging in its size? Of course there was. Because that gap is not a sign of inadequacy. It is the precise distance between the current self and the capable self. And the only currency accepted for crossing it is the willingness to remain in motion while uncomfortable. Every institution of genuine learning charges tuition. The university charges it in money and years. The school of personal transformation charges it in courage and persistence. Neither is free, neither should be, because the price is what makes the credential real. Now I want to draw an important distinction, one that I believe most people never clearly make, and whose absence costs them enormously. There is a difference between the discomfort of growth and the distress of genuine harm. I am not speaking tonight of recklessness. I am not urging you toward actions that damage your health, your relationships, or your fundamental well-being. That is not courage. That is simply poor judgment wearing a brave face. The discomfort I am speaking of is subtler and far more common. It is the discomfort of the conversation you have been postponing, because it requires honesty. The discomfort of the discipline that asks you to rise earlier than feels pleasant. The discomfort of attempting something publicly before you feel privately ready. The discomfort of sitting with uncertainty long enough to move through it rather than retreating from it. These are not dangerous experiences. They are developmental ones. And the person who learns to distinguish between the two, who can feel the friction of growth without mistaking it for a reason to stop, has acquired one of the most valuable skills available to a human being. They have learned to read discomfort accurately, not as a stop sign, but as a compass. Here is what I want you to carry with you from this evening forward. Every time you feel the specific friction of attempting something that genuinely stretches you, that pulls at the edges of your current capability, and asks more of you than your present habits have prepared you to give, I want you to recognize that feeling for precisely what it is. It is the tuition notice. It is the cost of the next version of yourself, presented for payment, and you can pay it. Not all at once, not without effort, but one courageous action at a time, on one ordinary day at a time. Across the 12 months you have committed to your own reinvention. The person you are becoming does not live in the comfortable territory of your current routines. They live just beyond the edge of what presently feels manageable. They are standing in the very place that today feels slightly too hard. Move toward that place, steadily, deliberately, with the calm confidence of someone who finally understands that the difficulty is not working against them. It is working for them. It has always been working for them. So here is what I ask of you. Not someday. Not when the time is right, not when circumstances are kinder or the path is clearer. Tonight, take out a single sheet of paper or open a blank screen and write the name of the person you intend to become. Then write the first chapter. Decide what this month will address, what habit it will build, and what you will do specifically, concretely, beginning tomorrow morning. Then sleep, then rise, then begin. And do not stop for 12 months. If you will do that, if you will truly do that, I promise you this 12 months from tonight, you will stand in your own life as a stranger to your former limitations, and as an intimate friend to a self you once only quietly hoped existed. That person is real. They are waiting. And the road to them begins with a single step, taken now in the quiet courage of this moment. This is Earl Nightingale. Good night and good becoming. The broadcast fades to silence. You become what you think about, and you behave your way into the person you think about becoming.